Hi,
Okay.
welcome to Detours. Hi, welcome to Detours Understanding Acquired Brain Injury. And with us, we have a new host. Her name is Courtney, and she'll be introducing herself and we'll be talking about her history. Hi, Courtney. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Courtney. So, Mark, would you just like me to give like a brief synopsis of my
Yeah,
background?
yeah, just share with us, like, as far as what your background is and what happened, brain injury, just a casual conversation.
Yes. So, I'm in my early 30s now, and I sustained my brain injury when I was a sophomore in college. I was 19 years old. I went in for it was supposed to be like a routine brain surgery on a cyst, but I had some complications during surgery, and there was like a brain hemorrhage. So they had to do a second. Uh, it was an evacuation of a hematoma, and I spent some time in the intensive care unit. I was technically on a ventilator, things like this, and they were trying to see how well I would progress and how much whether I was able to get further rehab. They didn't know how far I would go, but I would progress. I progressed through the hospital. I made it to inpatient rehab. Um, and that was the inpatient rehab stay was only about 10 days because then I went home, and usually insurance will cover some outpatient therapies for patients, and that's one of the things I wanted to discuss maybe later about like a barrier to a lot of recovery is that insurance will only cover so much treatment sometimes, like
Mm,
a lot of people max out their benefits at the inpatient rehab
right.
state.
Yeah,
And
they do.
I got some outpatient therapy, but my benefits maxed out after maybe like 3 months of outpatient therapy. And after that, the insurance said, okay, you're on your own. And I'm like, I'm
Yeah,
not better yet. And I wasn't better yet. I had to do my own, like, push my own self. I signed up for like a community college course. I was just trying to train my brain. It was hard.
right. And it was even tougher back in the day. I mean, when I went through, there really wasn't anything at all. I mean, I did some inpatient rehab, but they're kind of like that was all arms, legs, and there was really very little cognitive at all. It was mostly like, even today in many places, the speech path kind of helped you with some brain exercises, some kids' puzzles and stuff like that. But there still is no formal cognitive rehab specialist. There is no training to be a cognitive therapist. It doesn't exist um, at all. There is no cert anywhere. I've looked around the world. There's nothing like that. It doesn't exist. Um, because the truth is, most people died. And this is a problem. There are no specialty certifications outside of something for physicians. For everybody else, the most advanced you can get your certified brain injury specialist. This is why here at Friends of Brain Injury, we're trying to work on specialty authorization and or certifications and licensing for like a nurse if you want to specialize, and hopefully we'll succeed in developing a specialty for being a nurse in brain injury and maybe other things too. Maybe work on helping develop something for for making a cognitive therapist a fully licensed, or certified field. Doesn't exist. This is a problem, as I said, because most people died. It would have
Yeah.
warranted it.
Yeah. So it was very challenging. I ended up getting through 2 degrees, but the entire time it was challenging. I at one point in school brought a woman from the Brain Injury Association to my graduate school to
Mhm.
educate them on brain injury and accommodations in the workplace. It was like I was like the first person to like be doing this at the school, I guess. I don't know, because I had to bring an advocate to my school to
Right.
educate the school on accommodations I would need. And no one had I don't think anyone had ever done that before at that particular, graduate school. I was like paving a new path. I was like it was challenging. Yes.
And it's true for undergrad too. There are a lot of like they don't most just don't get that far,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
and the thing is, the guy at my undergrad, he was literally breaking the Americans with Disabilities Act because, I told him these are my accommodations I need. And he told me because it's an invisible disability, he says, you don't need this. You don't need note takers. And I said, what are you talking about? I have he I think that I don't know what happened to that guy because eventually someone replaced him, but it was a big mess. It was a big mess. We had to call disability rights. You know,
Mm.
each state in the United States has a disability rights
Yes.
of, you know, each state, and we had to call them, my family and I.
Mm. And we have talked here on the channel about the access to when you were in public school, about the fact that you can both use the Rehabilitation Act as well as under the IDEA. And if you don't have access, Lisa had talked about that a couple months ago, about you can use either the Rehab Act if you don't qualify under IDEA, 101-476 under the public education law, which is federal. But it gets stickier when you want to do post-secondary ed, because while they do provide an individual transition support plan, really, it was short of using the ADA, there's not a lot of like specific support for excuse me.
Bless you.
It's out. Darn it. There's not a lot of support for university students, even though it's not like, and this ties into something else. We're going to be doing a roundtable on intelligent, not intellectually impaired in that sense. We just have certain processing deficits and other things, problems supporting our intelligence. So people with TBI are not stupid. ABI of, you know, and remember there is a difference. TBI is induced traumatically due to, and yes, a cut to your brain is a traumatic brain injury, whether it's intentional through surgery or somebody whacks you in the head, or whether it is an accident, motor vehicle accident. Doesn't matter. Yet it's still a traumatic brain injury. Now, the effects from cyst that, you know, ruptures or bleeding, that is a secondary,
Yes.
non-traumatic brain injury. Anyway, I apologize. I digress. Please, you know, so what are the effects you had, if you don't mind me asking?
I know, like, initially my biggest thing was the cognitive. I had very severe short-term memory loss. And over the years I've improved, but I was repeating myself constantly. My best friend from high school came to visit me in the hospital and went up to one of the nurses on the rehab unit and said, is Courtney going to get better? And then she told our other high school friend about it. And everyone was like really worried about my memory because I kept telling like the same hospital jokes over and over again.
Yeah.
I mean, at the time I was just like, oh, haha, look at all this stuff. And I kept telling the same stories over and over. Things like this. I was losing things all the time. I couldn't keep track of anything.
Yeah.
It was very frustrating. So I had to do that intensive speech and cognitive therapy outpatient for several months to learn strategies. And I still use those strategies. So, yes.
So short-term
over
memory is your biggest problem.
Over the years, you know, I would get repeat testing, memory testing by the neuropsychologist to see how I was doing. And I've learned that over the, you know, your brain, certain areas, you can compensate for your deficits. Yes. But it takes time to get to that point where you're able to be really, really good at compensating for your deficits. Yeah.
So what today would you say are your biggest challenges, neuro challenges?
Like, I feel like multitasking is extremely difficult for me. It's extremely difficult to me. Like, even a couple days ago, my family said they were like trying to ask me something. It was like I guess my family was trying to ask me about something that required multitasking. And I'm like, you realize I can't do two things at the same time. Right. And just like anything, like even at work, at one of my previous jobs, one of my coworkers didn't know about my brain injury because I don't like to bring that up to my coworkers unless necessary. You know, I try to like keep it on the DL. But like at one point she could tell. It was really obvious, like she could tell because I was like focused on one thing. And then she started talking to me and she wanted me to answer all these questions while I was doing something else, which is a multitasking task. And I was like, I couldn't do it because I have a brain injury. And then I
Right.
had to tell her, like, this is what's going on. Like, it was bad. So
Right.
sometimes it's noticeable and people could tell.
Mhm. And that's typical. That is a very frontal lobe kind of thing. Trouble with divided attention, rapidly switching. I mean, as I've said, when I was talking frontal lobe, it's like it's literally impossible to multitask for the human brain. What we do is we switch attention rapidly, but rapid processing is one of those things we lose. It's um, when I mentioned about COVID and brain fog, that is related to delayed processing and problems with rapid processing, and that would manifest as so-called multitasking. That is one of the first things that is affected adversely with brain injury is our ability to rapidly process or attention switch, but also sensory overload, which also can manifest as what you're describing, what Courtney's describing here. We talked about the basic neurology behind that before. Um, Overload across the corpus callosum, which allows the two sides of the brain to talk to each other, which again is typical injury either from pressure, elevated pressure in the brain, or from white matter trauma. Sorry. Yeah. So anything else that stands out, either emotional, behavioral, or
I
motor
know,
deficit?
like sometimes, like, and I also, I had a pretty, I was like one of those COVID long haulers, and I felt like a couple years ago that might have aggravated my brain injury. So that's
Mhm.
why I've been like re-implementing a lot of my, cognitive therapy techniques in the
Mhm.
workplace, like extensive note taking,
Right.
organizational checklist, some people get a laptop and like record their work meetings. There's so many techniques you can use. And then you said something about emotional or behavioral. Sometimes like I can be like, if you have a brain injury, you can be more easily frustrated or like you be like a little edgy. That can happen to me.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely. That seems to be almost universal for us. Now, some people tend to be very apathetic or even adynamic, where they have trouble initiating behaviors, like even for things they used to love, you need like somebody to push them to get them to go. It's not everybody, but many people have that trouble, like starting behaviors. They'll end up just like staring or whatever, and you're like, hey, come on. I know I have some of that. Um, but mine was severe. So, so what strategies do you use to help you manage and deal with? Uh,
I like do try to like exercise and work out and like stress coping stress, stress relief methods like in the workplace. Sometimes like I'll go take a break if something's like I feel like my endurance over the years is really improved. Like I can literally work, 8 hours, but like sometimes I'm gonna need that break. Something stressful
mm,
happened at work. I need to go take a walk, come back, go to the
mm,
cafeteria. Who knows? Things like this, short little breaks, brain breathers. Who knows? That's what
right.
sometimes.
Do you deal with neurofatigue
I feel like I probably do. That's why I have to take short little breaks sometimes.
where you feel like completely drained and dead after a number of hours or anything like you feel like someone just pulled all the energy out of
I know, like, I've been a survivor for like 12 and a half years almost. So I feel like, and then initially in the first few years, I was very fatigued. I was super struggling. It was hard. It was definitely the first few years were severe fatigue, severe neurofatigue. Um, I had to do like a partial load in college, like
you.
only half a
Right.
only take half the number of classes a normal student would take, probably
Mm,
because of that neurofatigue, and then work my way back up over the
mm,
years. Yes. And even in graduate school, I decided to sign up as a part-time student. I did my program over 3 years instead of 2 years probably because of that neurofatigue, what you're talking about. I had to pace myself.
those of you who watch need to also keep something in mind. Each person's recovery profile is different. Because, as you know, you've heard from almost all of us here that the majority of us have still, even like for me, 30 years later, for Kate for more than 20 years, and Kim after 5, most of us suffer from still fairly substantial neurofatigue. Each person's profile is different, and it's a complex interplay of genetics and environmental factors and the nature of what we do, as well as just so many, and we're only now beginning to understand how that all works. So, I just want to stress that to anyone out there, and don't feel like Courtney does is how you should do, or what I'm doing is how you should do, or what Kate or Kim or Jocelyn or anyone. Your profile is unique to you as an individual, and I think it is important to stress this. It's part of why it's so difficult to treat brain injuries, because each brain and each brain recovery profile is as unique as the individual whose brain it is. So no one person's recovery profile is the same. And this is why it's so devilishly hard to treat brain injury. Sorry, I just wanted to stress that, because somebody may look at you and say, well, gee, how come I'm not doing it? Well, the reason is because each brain is unique. And it's not that one is better or more whatever. It's just,
Yeah.
and it's
And
important
that's
to
something
stress
I
that as a
have learned
clinician.
too. Every brain injury is different. And also people obtain brain injuries in different parts of their brain. So that's
Yes.
going to control a different aspect, of your,
Re-
like, so people will have different symptoms based
Symptoms,
on where
yes.
the brain
Sequelae
is.
are different. Mhm.
Yeah.
But recovery seems to be regulated genetically. The new neurogenetics research suggests that how you recover, your speed of recovery, whether you actually do better or worse, and some people do actually progressively get worse and not better, that is all regulated through complex genetics, epigenetic factors. I do have a video on that where I discuss some of the epigenetic factors, but that is a whole other thing. And no, we're not going in depth into genetics here because of its high degree of complexity, or epigenetics. I only hinted at that. That is an entire curriculum.
Yes.
But as I mentioned, um, and it's like even me with a medical education would not go swimming in those waters. They are very deep. But yes, so that regulates recovery as well, and what kind of profile. There may come a time where we could test for that and say, you have a proclivity towards brain injury, for example. But we are nowhere near that. So let's. All right. Sorry. Anyway, so what are the kind of things you'd want to talk about in the future?
Um, I know I had sent you some articles that I had already previously mentioned, about like inpatient rehab, how a lot of people might max out there, and how there's some systemic barriers for patients, like just with like getting insurance to cover what's needed. And then something else about there's no FDA approved treatment for brain injury. The only treatment is rehab, as you had told me. And then what else? We could talk about maybe like I'm really into disability rights. That's a potential topic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so many things that we could discuss. So,
Well, I mean, it's significantly driven by what comments are made and what other people would suggest, as always. So, anyone who sends messages to us um, down below, or who would email us to the group website here. So we're always listening. But your area is social work?
what did you say?
Social work, what you do.
Yes, I'm a social worker. So,
Right.
I've worked in several types of settings. Yes.
So that area would, of course, be, what we'd be turning to your expertise. But like so many of us who are here who have expertise in different areas, it's like what we really are the most profound experts in is survivorship. And so, it's like talking about our experience as survivors first and foremost. As observers, as those who would be subscribers and watchers of this material here, it's like many just want to know how we've made it where we have. And so we will be touching certainly on that a lot. So we got people from all walks of life here.
Yes.
whether it's social workers, physicians, nurses, whatever we may be, attorneys, psychologists, therapists, researchers, all of them here. And so it's important to note, that brain injury can happen to anyone. One wrong turn, one mess up with a scalpel, and you're a member of a very big family of brain injury survivors. And come here. We may be able to help you. Heck, join us. Um, join us. um, Bad joke, but
Okay.
um, that's the only kind I know. Um, Sense of humor can be affected by brain injury too. Either uh, you only know slapstick or bad jokes, or lose your sense of humor, which would be really bad. Because yeah. Anyway, so I'm just going to urge you, please send your email to us, comments below. If you have questions for Courtney specifically, maybe she'll be able to help you. Remember, laws are different in each state, but there are a lot of federal laws too to help you if you have disability issues. Uh, you do have your rights. Keep that in mind, and that I think would be something important for us to talk about soon too.
Yes.
Protecting your rights as a disability survivor, as a survivor of brain injury, your disability access. All right, so I will say thank you very much. I appreciate it. Introducing yourself and joining our family here at Fred's Brain Injury, and see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye, guys.